Oh, late night Thursday, but Thursday is normally a late night for us. July 10th, 2025 on a Thursday. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Karen Smith. Call me Q, and what's up? We on the corner. Alright, guys, so tonight, pretty short night. 2 clips, 2 things that had my attention that I wanted to share with you guys. So, not a super long night. It's on purpose, obviously. We got Stephen A. Smith reacting to Diddy's not being guilty case, like on 3 accounts, which this is something we knew and acquitted on others, but he just made a good take here. So I wanted to just watch the first like 10 minutes of this. Then you guys can hop over to his channel and watch the rest, because this is like almost an hour, so we're not gonna watch that much of that. And then we're gonna jump over to Coleman Hughes. Shout out to Coleman. He did an interview with Mayor Eric Adams. So definitely, I always tell you guys, make sure you're grounded or regulated before you watch this stuff, especially tonight, because they'll be talking about Diddy's trial, and then some things with Mayor Eric Adams when he was growing up as a young man, and then as he became a cop, and then, you know, as his career progressed. So these things are definitely probably going to be a little bit triggering for some people. So yeah, just make sure that you take care of yourself, grounded or regulated. If you're not, come back later. If you are, welcome to the live stream and stick around. So those are the 2 clips we got up. Without further ado, I'm going to jump right into Stephen A. Smith's clip. Attorneys react to Diddy being not guilty on 3 accounts, acquitted on others. Now, he did this a few days ago, not too long ago, but I just like the certain take he had during his observation. So we're going to watch a couple minutes of this and then switch over to Coleman Hughes. Let's go. You know what? Let me, give me a minute, guys. Let me grab something real quick. A lot of people were saying this was a huge interview for Coleman Hughes. I don't know. I feel like he's had bigger interviews. I was like, really, this is huge? He's been on The View, but I mean, that's so controversial, and a lot of people say more women watch The View than anything, so. Alright, guys, let's take a look at this clip by Stephen A. Smith. Let's take a listen.
Was found not guilty on 3 of those 3 times a week over the digital airways of YouTube. Having said all of that, forget all of that, because that don't matter today. Today is a special edition, and I'm getting right into it. Let's get started. P. Diddy was found not guilty on 3 of those charges. The Diddy sex trafficking trial verdict,
and we knew that. We knew that already.
Jurors in Sean Diddy Combs' federal criminal trial acquitted him of the most serious charges: racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking, but found him guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs could receive a prison.
Whoever thought that they was going to be able to really get Diddy on RICO is ridiculous. Since when does somebody get charged on RICO and they're literally the sole only person involved? That's ridiculous.
Up to 20 years, the maximum is 10 for each of the transportation counts. If he had been convicted of any of the other counts, the 55-year-old could have faced life imprisonment. The defense has asked that Combs be released while he awaits sentencing instead.
The judge said no to that.
Opposed, of course. The judge said he'll make a decision after the sides submit letters at 1 p.m. Eastern time earlier today, at the time of this taping.
And remember, I said this was a few days ago, but I like the take that Stephen did on this. So we know the judge's decision was no. We know that. We know Diddy, as of right now, still remains in jail.
We were still awaiting a decision from the judge as to whether or not P. Diddy would be let out on bail. After the verdict,
Riverbug, shout out to you.
Gallery and clapped, and his family and friends
shout out to you,
erupted in applause. Ladies and gentlemen, to a lot of you, this was a shock. As this trial unfolded, I can't sit up here and say to you today that it's a shock.
Nope.
Because time and time again, we repeatedly asked on this show, where is the case for sex trafficking being made?
Right.
Where is the case for racketeering and those RICO charges? Where is that being made? And the jury spoke earlier today and said it wasn't made. Not enough to our satisfaction. And as a result, we are going to let him out. What exactly did they let him out on? Let's go over that again. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. Up to life in prison. That was the penalty. P. Diddy was found not guilty. Count number 2, sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, his former girlfriend, that we saw him on video hitting and kicking. That drew a minimum of 15 years and a maximum of life imprisonment if convicted. He was found not guilty. Count number 4, sex trafficking of Jane, the Jane Doe, another ex-girlfriend, a minimum of 15 years and a maximum of life imprisonment. He was found not guilty. For those of you who don't understand it, Jane is basically a placeholder named in the U.S. and some other legal systems where the identity of a person is withheld, okay? So that's why they say Jane Doe. He was found not guilty on that charge. Here's the charges he was found guilty on. Transporting individuals, including but not limited to Cassie Ventura, to engage in prostitution. A maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. He was found guilty on that charge. He was also found guilty on transporting individuals, including but not limited to Jane, to engage in prostitution. Basically same charge, 2 different people, the Jane Doe and Cassie Ventura. He was found guilty on both of those charges. So, the worst case scenario is that he could be sentenced to 10 years in prison for each, okay? And that he could face up to 20 years. Everybody that I've spoken to, and I'm about to bring you 2 legal experts to explain all of this to you. Everybody that I've spoken to said, forget 20 years, he's not even getting 10.
Nope.
In all likelihood, it won't be 5. And there's a slim possibility that he'll get 2 to 3 years. So you've got people out there speculating that it could be 1 to 0 as it pertains to the amount of time that P. Diddy spends in jail. Why on earth would that happen? Well, there's a couple of reasons to point to. Clearly, the Southern District of New York,
fix this angle,
an elite prosecution unit, didn't do their job well enough. So they didn't get him on sex trafficking. They didn't get him on racketeering.
No RICO. They
didn't get him on that stuff. Okay? They didn't get him on it for Cassie Ventura or Jane Doe. That's number 1. Number 2, what's another reason why he can get off? Because now it's at the discretion of the judge. And if the judge is pissed off because you've had this dude in jail since last spring practically, and the judge is of the mindset that you didn't make your case. And you just piled on.
You just wasted
time. So you
time.
made this argument on behalf of the Southern District of New York, and you didn't make your case. You essentially wasted the court's time.
Wasted
so
taxpayers'
money. So why are we gonna waste any more time on this particular issue? When you went and you was hell-bent on putting this man behind bars for the rest of his natural life, and now he's in a situation where he could face minimal time. Why waste the court's time any longer on this issue? The judge couldn't make that assertion. He couldn't make that determination. He has the power to do that. We also have to take into account that P. Diddy can appeal the 2 charges that he was found guilty of in terms of transporting individuals.
Especially if you didn't tie nobody up and throw them in the van.
So you remember when Elliot Spencer was the governor of New York? Remember when he got in trouble and he had to leave office because he was using an escort service and had one particular woman who tickled his fancy, but who knows how many that travel from New York to New Jersey. The thing about that case is that he was never charged with a crime. So Diddy's team can make the argument, why is he being charged with this? Why was he charged with this in the first place? It was clear overreach by the prosecution, which has now been exposed. P. Diddy may end up not spending any more time in jail. At the time of this taping, we are sitting here waiting for the judge to decide whether or not Diddy's going to be let out on bail until his sentencing. And if he's let out on bail until his sentencing, and then he comes back for his sentencing, and that sentencing could be anything from 1 to 2 to 3 years in prison, or maybe it's just community service and a stiff fine. That's it. The fact that you lost not once, not twice, but on 3 separate charges that could have given him 15 years to life imprisonment is bad for the prosecution. And if we're being honest, because we have to go here, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't look great for a lot of supposed victims out there. Now, before I go any further with this subject, let me be very, very clear. My heart goes out
Be gentle, Steve.
to any of those victims out there.
Yep. Be gentle.
Any real life victims of the kind of things that Cassie Ventura and that Jane Doe described, for something like that to be happening to anyone is egregious, and I personally believe that people who do that stuff should be thrown under the damn jail.
Especially this
As do most human beings.
Disrespectful.
In terms of sharing those kind of feelings about people who perpetrate such heinous acts. But we got to be real about something here. Diddy getting off on this charge, on these charges, was the jury saying, we don't believe you.
Yeah.
For the most part, we don't believe you. Why would they say that? Because the text messages that were revealed between Cassie Ventura and P. Diddy showed a willingness on her part to participate in the quote-unquote freak-offs. In the eyes of the jury, you were complicit. It was consensual. They weren't buying that you were forced. The same could be said for Jane Doe and what her text messages revealed. Remember, there were occasions when the freak-offs didn't even involve P. Diddy. Yep. And you had Cassie and Jane engaging in freak-offs of their own volition and picking partners that they wanted to be with. That's what the jury is saying. Stephen A. Smith ain't saying this. I wasn't in the courtroom. I didn't hear every nugget of evidence. I'm just telling you what they said.
Yeah, it was a federal case, so he couldn't be in the courtroom.
I'm just telling you what they said. Now, the Southern District of New York, Homeland Security, remember when they went to his homes in Miami and LA? And of course, attorneys for the alleged victims are going to have their own things to say. And let's hear what they have to say. Let's put it right up for everybody to see. Because we have to make sure that we're paying attention to that. This, what I'm about to read, is a joint statement from Jay Clayton and Ricky J. Patel, U.S. Attorneys for Southern District of New York and Special Agent in charge of New York Field Office of Homeland Security Investigations. Here's what they had to say. Sex crimes deeply scar victims. And the disturbing reality is that sex crimes are all too present in many aspects of our society. Victims endure gut-wrenching physical and mental abuse, leading to lasting trauma. New Yorkers and all Americans want this scourge stopped and perpetrators brought to justice. Prosecuting sex crimes requires brave victims to come forward and tell their harrowing stories, they said. We and our law enforcement partners recognize the hardships victims endure and have prioritized a victim-centered approach to investigating and prosecuting these cases. You know what that sounds like? All that, respectfully, it sounds like covering your ass.
See, I know YouTube was
What they're essentially saying is that we had extreme justification
y'all.
for bringing these inordinate amount of charges against P. Diddy. Respectfully to the Southern District of New York and the Homeland Security, what I would say in response to that,
flip it, so
prosecutors.
I know you can't see. I know you guys can't read it.
To say, let's put it right up.
Sex crimes deeply scar victims, and a disturbing reality is that sex crimes are all too present in many aspects of our society. Victims endure gut-wrenching physical and mental abuse, leading to lasting trauma. New Yorkers and all Americans want this scourge stopped and perpetrators brought to justice. Prosecuting sex crimes requires brave victims to come forward and tell their harrowing stories, they said. We and our law enforcement partners recognize the hardships victims endure and have prioritized a victim-centered approach to investigating and prosecuting these cases. So this was a joint statement from Jay Clayton and Ricky J. Patel.
Didn't see. Because we have to make sure that we're paying attention to that. This, what I'm about to read, is a joint statement from Jay Clayton and Ricky J. Patel, U.S. Attorneys for Southern District of New York and Special Agent in charge of New York Field Office of Homeland Security Investigation. Here's what they had to say. Sex crimes deeply scar victims. And the disturbing reality is that sex crimes are all too present in many aspects of our society. Victims endure gut-wrenching physical and mental abuse, leading to lasting trauma. New Yorkers and all Americans want this scourge stopped and perpetrators brought to justice. Prosecuting sex crimes requires brave victims to come forward and tell their harrowing stories, they said. We and our law enforcement partners recognize the hardships victims endure and have prioritized a victim-centered approach to investigating and prosecuting these cases. You know what that sounds like? All that, respectfully, it sounds like covering your ass. What they're essentially saying is that we had extreme justification for bringing these inordinate amount of charges against P. Diddy. Respectfully to the Southern District of New York and the Homeland Security, what I would say in response to that statement that I just read is that the jury is saying you overreached. The jury is saying that your case wasn't nearly as strong as you purported it to be.
You were not convincing, sir.
You're saying that you got a victim's approach to this. They're saying Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe weren't the victims you claimed they were.
I'm gonna pause that right there. You guys head over to Stephen A. Smith's channel and watch the rest of that. He did that a couple of days ago. It's titled Attorneys React to Diddy's Being Not Guilty on 3 Counts, Acquitted on Others. Shout out to Stephen A. Smith. And yeah, like he's saying, he didn't say that they weren't victims. I do like the way that he put that. He articulated that well. He said Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe were not the victims you claimed them to be. So he didn't say that they were not victims, but yeah, absolutely. But I said it. I was like, there's charges here. They do this. They trump charges, right? They no pun intended to our president, but they trump charges. Like they stack them up, and it's like, you know, like I don't know. For some reason, I think about that little mechanism as a child that I would have, where like I guess you had like 2 sticky pads, and like you could throw like a fuzzy tennis ball at it, and like the tennis ball would like stick to the pad, and you could throw it back and forth and it would like stick to each pad. It's like that's what they do with the charges. They trump them up and they like kind of just throw them at the wall, and like they're like, okay, something good has to stick. Well, you know, at least 2 stick, but some of them the weightier charges, I knew they weren't going to be able to get them on this. Like this is stuff that it's not even like I didn't want justice for the victims. Who wouldn't want justice for a victim? It's the truth. It's the right thing. But just looking at the way they were stacking up the charges and what they were trying to get to stick in, like the evidence they were providing, I agree with Stephen A. Smith. The jury was like, nah, we're not convinced. Try again. So yeah, like they did convict them on some things, but just probably not what they were hoping for. Jasmine probably on political backlash. Oh, Jamal, boy. That has to be kind of crazy. Let me put this right here. This is something I'm going to watch before I bring it to you guys. Alright guys, so let's get into this. Shout out to Coleman Hughes. Coleman Hughes is one of my favorite podcasters / political commentators on YouTube by far. He covered Eric Adams to Cuomo. Get out and let me be Mamdani. So this is Eric Adams saying this to Governor Cuomo. Get out and let me be Mamdani. We know Zohran Mamdani was the candidate that surpassed Cuomo in the mayoral race in New York City. Right now, it's looking like he's going to kind of take the seat. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm pretty sure they have until November. I mean, you got a 22% turnout rate. For sure, it's a lot of younger voters voting for him. I do not think a lot of older voters participated in this vote, which Mayor Adams, if he wants that, if he really wants that, he has to get the older voters in the city to vote, because I do not believe 50 and 60-year-olds were voting for Mamdani. So he has to do the due diligence to get some of the older voters out there to vote, because once I heard the numbers at 22% and I saw his numbers, I was like, oh, these are definitely Gen Z and millennial people without a doubt. Millennials and Gen Z without a doubt. Yeah, so let's take a look at Coleman Hughes and this interview he had with Mayor Eric Adams. And they're talking about a lot of good things. I don't even want to spoil it because I did get to watch some of it. So let's jump right in.
Welcome.
Hey guys, this is a 48-minute episode that Coleman posted, so we're not going to go that deep because I want you guys to go to his channel and actually watch. We're probably only going to go about 20-25 minutes in, and then I want you guys to head over to his channel and watch it.
To another episode of Conversations with Coleman. My guest today is Eric Adams. Eric Adams is the current mayor of New York City and former captain of the NYPD. He has spent more than 2 decades in law enforcement. He represented Brooklyn's 20th State Senate District from 2007 to 2013, and he served as Brooklyn Borough President from 2014 to 2022. In this episode, we talk about why Eric Adams defended the police even at the height of the BLM movement, as did I. We talk about Zohran Mamdani, the New York City mayoral hopeful that has come seemingly out of nowhere to become the favorite in the race, as well as how Adams plans to beat him. We talk about the mistakes that Andrew Cuomo made in his failed bid to grab the Democratic nomination. We talk about how to make housing affordable and subways safer. We talk about the problems posed by e-bikes. We talk about how to make the streets of New York City cleaner, and much more. So without further ado, Eric Adams. All right, Mayor Adams, thanks so much for coming on my show.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have something in common, which is that in 2020, at the height of the defund the police movement, when people wanted to strip the police of all their tools and all their funding, we both defended the police at a time when it was unpopular to do so in New York and around the country. And there's an added wrinkle in your case, which is that as a kid, you were beaten by the cops. And so for many people, that would lead you to grow up and hate the cops. But for you, it didn't. For you, you became a police officer.
Right.
So tell me about that decision.
That wouldn't be the case.
An amazing journey. Life is very interesting. My brother and I was 15, he was 16, and we were arrested by police officers for criminal trespass. And that story in itself is just part of the Eric Adams saga. But when they arrested us, they were filling out their paperwork. And the guy just said, "You feel like a beatdown." They didn't chase us, there was no reason. They took us down to the basement of the 103rd precinct, where they just kicked us in our groin over and over and over again. And I remember, he and I never talked about it until later, that we were urinating blood for a whole week. We never even told our mother about it. It wasn't until adults that there was a New York Times story on it that my mom and I, we sat down and talked about it. And there was a black cop that poked his head in the room. He said, "That's enough." And, it was traumatizing. You felt as though you were demasculated. And, you're a young boy, you're 15, you're impressionable. And then a short time later, Cliffy Glover was killed. And Reverend Herbert Daughtry, he later became a spiritual father for me. He sat down and told 13 of us, there was a series of murders with police and black communities. Cliffy Glover, Randolph Evans, and Arthur Miller, prominent businessman. He died from a chokehold. And he said, "There's enough. We need you young black men to go into the police department and fight from within." And I was like, "Man, you on crack?" Are you kidding me?
Such a New
But I
York
had so much
comment.
respect for them that I did it. And little did I know, if you have a demon inside you, sometimes you have to go in to get it out of you. Because I was traumatized. If I saw a police vehicle, I relived that beating. If I saw a police show, I wouldn't even watch a police show because I relived the beating. If I saw an officer walk down the block, I would relive it. So I was going through PTSD, and he empowered me to fight from within. And because of that, I was able to get that demon out of me, and I felt empowered.
You pretty much take it all. Fridges and dishwashers and dressers, drawers, couches.
Mentorship.
Because of that.
Yeah, and then you became someone that really was a defender of the police at a time when it was very controversial to do so. And I think that explained part of your appeal in 2020 and 2021, because I've said this, my podcast listeners have heard this 1,000 times, they're bored of hearing it, but at the height of 2020, Gallup polled Black Americans and asked them, do you want more police in your neighborhood, less police, or the same? Mm-hmm. And 80% said more or the same.
Yeah, no
which
kidding.
meant only 20% of just Black people, to say nothing of other demographics, did not want less police, right? And yet, if you read the New York Times or you just paid attention to media, you would never get that sense.
Right. You know, what you are saying is so important on many of these topics. We have the intellectual elite who are deciding what is good for the communities. And they are creating a narrative.
Just so you guys know, because we're what we react to here on this channel, and the types of things. I think this story is so good, and it's like I think some of it's very important. So I am going to actually be playing this again throughout the week. I'm probably going to play some of it on Friday and some of it on Saturday, since we're not going to watch all of it. So just a heads up.
Where when you go to the average person, they're like, that's not what we want. You know, and so I do a lot of town halls. And when I go into the town halls, the adult town, older adult town halls, youth town halls, even young people, I've never heard one person stand up and say, I want less police.
Yeah, no kidding.
Either
Except
they
the far
want
left
quality
Democrats.
police, right? No one wants to be harassed or disrespected, but they're like, where are our cops? And we did youth town halls last year over the summer, and it was unbelievable how young people were saying, we want to feel safe. We want a good relationship with our police officers. So the intellectual elite who have either private security on their blocks or who could care less about public safety, they are not speaking on behalf of those who want their police where they are on their blocks, on their corners, in the subway. They want their police.
Okay, I want to get to crime more in a moment, but let's talk because it's the big news right now. Zoran Mamdani, he's taken the city by storm. He beat Cuomo, and he has a huge appeal, especially to younger New Yorkers. Younger New Yorkers, they see Zoran Mamdani, they see a guy that goes out on the street, puts a microphone in front of New Yorkers' faces and says, what do you need? He goes to a halal cart and says, you know, why is chicken and rice so expensive? They see someone who's in touch with people on the ground and has pragmatic solutions. So why are they wrong about that?
Well, first of all he did was he took a picture.
And I'm not gonna lie, to me this doesn't really matter, but Coleman Hughes is making a good point here when he's saying that, because it's like something as simple as that. People might think, okay, like he's talking about him being on the street and asking about chicken and rice, what's the big deal? And it's like, if we think about it, that's a huge deal, right? Because that makes all the difference. And if the candidate is related to the people, if the candidate is out there, you know, hitting the ground, talking to the people. Now, Mayor Eric Adams is gonna say he just basically took a page out of his book. That's why Mamdani was doing that to begin with. But yeah, like I do think that is some of the way that he got a lot of the younger vote, because they're gonna see that and they're gonna be like, oh wow, look at this politician on the street and walking just the common streets like us and asking common people questions. So yeah, I think that is one thing that that helped catapult him in the polls.
On the ground and has pragmatic solutions. So why are they wrong about that?
Well, first of all he did was he took a page out of my book. I'm the mayor that's on the subway. I'm the mayor that's, you know, stop in the middle of the night and go into the beauty salon after they close and sit down, smoke a cigar with them and say, hey, what's going on the ground in the community? That has always been my trademark. I enjoy this entire city. You can find me in the Sukkah one day, you can find me in the Diwali a celebration, you can find me at a Kwanzaa event. I am an authentic New Yorker. So what happened here? If you do an analysis of this, 6 months ago, I told my team he was going to beat Andrew Cuomo, and that we needed to be ready in the general election, and there was a whole science behind that. He had a ready-made army. There were a large number of people who were already on our college campuses, angry, protesting, with all sorts of radicalizing ideas that were put inside them. We were having thousands of people who were marching every day in our streets just about. We had almost 4,000 marches in the city over the Palestinian and the Israeli issue. Then you had the anti-Trump energy that was real. So you had the intersectionality of three major events that people were already in the streets. He came along and basically became the funnel of all of that anger. People wanted to put it out. And then you add to the fact that we were dealing with a national affordability issue. We were dealing with national issues around housing and all the things that young people say, wait a minute, I'm making $100,000, but why am I able to feel as though I'm doing well? So you're dealing with all of that, and he became the symbol of that for a pocket of people. Because remember, 9% of the voters voted. 9%, 91%, they have yet to speak. You know, 2.5 million Democrats have not voted. 1 million.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that haven't voted. It was only a 22% turnout, I think.
So there's a whole body of people who have yet to communicate what their feelings are. It was a great feat on his part. Andrew Cuomo was lazy. He took New Yorkers for granted. I keep telling people all the time, New Yorkers have 5 fingers. They love the middle one the most. If you are not authentically willing to...
No, he's not lying right there. Shout out to Mayor Eric Adams right there. There's a couple things he said in this interview where I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a classic New York comeback. Like when he's telling the story about him being a young kid and one of his mentors tell him, you know, it's enough of this. We need some young black men to go into the police force and, you know, fight from within, like show yourself from within. And he's like, man, you on crack. And when I was watching it with my wife, I told her that. I was like, dude, that's like a classic New York comeback. And she knows this because there's a lot of times, I might not say it like that anymore because I don't live in the city anymore. So I might not be like, man, you on crack, but I do say a lot of times something like crack kills. Like I'll say things like that all the time. That's like it's such a common New York comeback. It's crazy.
For a pocket of people. Because remember, 9% of the voters voted. 9%, 91%, they have yet to speak. You know, 2.5 million Democrats have not voted, 1 million independents, 800,000 Republicans have not voted. So there's a whole body of people who have yet to communicate what their feelings are. It was a great feat on his part. Andrew Cuomo was lazy. He took New Yorkers for granted. I keep telling people all the time, New Yorkers have 5 fingers. They love the middle one the most. If you are not authentically willing to go out there and engage with New Yorkers, you can't just play this game. He did not want to be mayor. He saw this as a stepping stone. He was forcibly, he stepped down from being the governor. He thought this was an easy, I'm Andrew Cuomo, so this can happen. And it didn't happen. And the polls showed him winning by 32%. He lost by 12% because the new voters, and that's what's going to determine this race. So the same energy you have with this group of young people who are buying what he's selling, there's another energy that's out there of a group of young people that are saying, hold on here. This is not what I believe in.
Yeah, and, like me.
I believe that we can continue to come here and move up through the ranks. So that's the message I have to get out.
So Mamdani and many of his supporters are proud democratic socialists.
There are even people younger than me. There are Gen Zers that think Mamdani is too far to the left. So yeah, absolutely what Mayor Eric Adams is saying, I totally agree with him. And he's right, there's an entire body of people that have yet to vote. That's why when I saw the turnout was only 18 to 22%, I'm like, I don't know about that. That's not a large turnout for voting. Not in New York.
What do you think of democratic socialism as a set of policies for New York City at this time?
Yeah, great question. And 70% of New Yorkers are not anti the term socialism. And many people don't really understand the term socialism and what it means. You know, I've been to Cuba, I've been to Venezuela, I've been to countries where socialism exists. I saw the empty shelves in the ration books in Cuba and what it means. So we're romanticizing the terminology, and it always sounds good, you know, that, you know, I'm a socialist. But when you dig into what it means, you understand. When you get stuff for free, someone is paying for it.
Somebody.
And so that delivery worker who's giving us 12 hours on that bike or moped delivering food, people who get things for free, that delivery worker is paying taxes. So all these things that when you are really frustrated, you have a tendency to believe that what he is selling, he can deliver. And he can't. Just look at the free bus conversation.
Yeah, you can't do
In
that.
order to get free buses, you need $3 billion. He says, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tax the 1%ers in New York. and I'm going to get the $3 billion from them.
And they're gonna
Here's
all
the
move
problem. Mayors can't raise income taxes. Assemblyman can.
No kidding.
He's an assemblyman. He didn't do it. So why does he believe he's going to do it now when the governor said that is not going to happen? Or his socialist theory of let's open government supermarkets. Hey, what about the bodegas, brother? What about those men and women in the Korean community that open up supermarkets, that open up stores? What about the Chinese community or the Arab community? All of these communities have used their feeding of their constituencies as a way to hire people and to move up in the American dream. So we're going to totally disregard them and collapse the entire industry? Oh, look at this great socialist idea of emptying Rikers Island. We passed bail reform. So to get on Rikers Island, you have to be one of the most dangerous people in the city. Rape, robbery, homicides, murders. 7,400 people are there. His mindset is, we're going to close down Rikers and put them back into the communities. They will go back into the black and brown communities where they victimized for years. When you think about the theory, this is an intellectual elitist that is actually doing some form of experiment. And I'm saying we need real experience to get this done.
Let's go check the front door. All right, let's bring him in and unbox the first look. Oh, there's a bear brooding. All right, next time.
So a few days ago, the New York Times reported on a hack of Columbia University's admissions program, which found that Zohran Mamdani, as a 17-year-old, identified as not only Asian, but also Black or African American when he applied to college. What do you make of that?
Well, when you go back during that time, remember they had to identify certain seats that would go to particular groups. They had to make sure that the diversity in the mix was correct. He was not an American at the time. He claims that he could not find an appropriate box when there was a box that I think it said mixed race or something of that nature. So there was a box there. And then he stated himself, when someone asked him about, does he consider himself to be an African American? He said, no, that would be misleading. And so yet you check the box and say, hey, you saying it was misleading, just the inconsistency. What he should have done, as I did for the last few months of going through that lawfare that I experienced, of having an indictment that was unfairly dropped on me. What I did, I went to New Yorkers and I said, I'm sorry for putting you through this. I should not have trusted people that did things that I was not aware of. I never broke the law, but I'm sorry, New Yorkers. What he should have just done, I'm sorry. You know, he should say, I'm sorry that I'm Hanukkah and a very real holiday in the Jewish community. I mean, we can't be so big to not say, listen, bad thinking, should have done it differently. As I look back, I'm sorry. But he can't say he's sorry because he wants to be perfect. I'm perfectly imperfect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I'm not ashamed to say perfection is not one of my trademarks. Dedication is my trademark.
So I want to ask you about that too. In your perspective, you were unfairly persecuted, but a lot of New Yorkers really believe that the crimes you were accused of, you've been accused.
Because he wants to be perfect. I'm perfectly imperfect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I'm not ashamed to say perfection is not one of my trademarks. Dedication is my trademark.
I want to stop it right there because since I'm going to play it Friday and Saturday, I'm going to leave it up and we're going to leave it right there at that marker. I think this interview is great. Shout out to Coleman Hughes, man. I loved watching it. I did not get to finish it, so I'll probably be watching some of it with you guys, like just raw and up front. But yeah, I definitely appreciated this interview. I appreciated Mayor Eric Adams' transparency. If you never really watched him in an interview, just sit down and talk because maybe you're a conservative or you're a Republican, so you're like, yeah, I'm never gonna listen to Adams. I would say you make a mistake there because I feel like he's come a lot more centerline, especially since President Trump has been in office second time. And I've actually appreciated that about him. You know, New York State is my home state. That's the state that I'm from. So I would never want to see just New York being shambles. So I know how the people of California feel, people who were born in that state, and they're watching it, like they, at least what they feel like go to ruins. It's like, it's a heartbreaking thing. So some of the things I've seen in New York over just the last half of a decade, I'm like, man, like what is happening, you know, to New York? It was not like that the last time I lived in the state. It was not like that when I was younger. You know, New York is New York. It's the city. It has it has its ups and downs. But what I'm seeing lately is concerning. So you know, I would like. Again, I always say I don't have anything against Zoran Mamdani. I just don't think he's the right candidate right now. Right, like right now, I don't think that's what New York needs. So I'm praying that things work out in a way where the city can be prosperous. Let's just say that, and they can continue to grow in a positive way and be prosperous and not go in a downward spiral. All right, guys. So we're gonna wrap this live stream up. I will be back tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Love yourselves. Love one another, and be peaceful. Peace.